Hardhat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
What's going on, everybody? John Zanis, Bobby Manning, Noah Dalzell, NBA trade deadline show. Counting down the minutes, we are 26 minutes away from the trade deadline expiring. The Celtics made their move. Rest in peace, Jaden Springer. No, yeah.
Boo.
Noah's gonna have a Noah will have a we'll give Noah time for a proper eulogy on that. I don't expect much else is going to happen, but you never know. That being said, an insane amount of activity so far, just in the last few days, but even another flurry of deals here. So before we rip into everything, let me just ask you quickly, is there any world in which you could see the Celtics doing anything at this point in time? And it's been quiet as hell. And the reason they can't really do anything is because it would have to involve somebody that you would think would be unthinkable to trade at this point. So I can't envision any world in which something happens, but if they were to surprise us, what could possibly go down right now?
They could do something. They got an exception from the Springer thing. That gives you about $4 million to work with here. It's just, are they going to give up picks into the future to add a guy who might not play down the stretch here? Obviously, the guy I was looking for is Yabusele, and that was a pure rental that might not play down the stretch here, and he hasn't moved yet either. Nothing on the Sixers side since those couple trades that they did yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever that was. So,
they've traded everybody but Yabu, basically.
Yeah. So after the Springer trade went through, I heard that there could be one more thing coming. Obviously, there needs to be something coming. They need to fill that roster spot within 2 weeks here. It's just, is it going to happen via trade before the deadline here, or are they going to pick up a buyout guy / free agent after the deadline? Given that the Springer move, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, pretty quickly here, given that that was such a money move, I'd have to imagine that they'll probably take the cheapest route possible in terms of filling that spot, which would be signing a guy for like $1 million for the rest of the year. And that cap hit would be, or a tax hit would be like $2-3 million. So that's what I would have to guess they'll do here. But, if some opportunity arises and some intriguing player becomes available, they do have that exception available now over the next, however many minutes are left here. So obviously timing, you would bet against it, Noah, but, again, it's been pretty quiet. Hasn't been a lot of buzz. Usually that is where things that surprise us happen. So I'm not going to rule it out, but definitely odds against it at this point.
Twitter's been really skittish about Jrue Holiday. Not crazy, but a lot of people are like, you guys better not trade Jrue. And I'm not saying there's any buzz behind that, but, of the only name I've heard, which would have been a shocking potential trade for the Celtics, has been Holiday. And I don't see that happening at all. But I do think people are a little bit worried about the money and needing to eventually start to move off some of these contracts. A lot of people assume something's going to happen this offseason, and it would be weird and silly to gut your team in the middle of another championship run. But I don't know, Noah, where's your head at in terms of, what possibly could transpire in the last few minutes here for the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, I get why Jrue comes up because his contracts can maybe long term, but not the most optimal. But the reality is that they signed him before his playoff run. He was great in the playoffs, and now they're right in the mix back to contend for a championship. And so to get rid of him now, it's hasn't been that terrible of a few months with Jrue Holiday. That I think that would be a pretty drastic move, especially because I do think he has been, I don't want to say coasting, but I think they know that there's another gear that he can get to. I would be pretty surprised if anything happened just because of the time. It's 2:38. We're 22 minutes away. I feel like the majority of things have already happened, but the lack of chatter has not been a sign for me because we know that we don't really hear a lot of rumors, generally speaking, before the deadline. So it probably was just a Springer salary dump, unfortunately. Curious to see who they pick up for that 14th spot, if it's one of the two ways getting converted or if it's somebody else that they have their eyes on. But to me, this is what the deadline should have been. I don't think you needed to do anything drastic. In fact, I would be pretty against initial instinct, trading any of your core rotation players when you wanted to run it back. I think there was obviously that stretch where they weren't as consistent, but of late, I think they've shown enough flashes to make me just want to run it back with the same group.
No doubt.
So
No doubt about it.
I'll
Go ahead,
disagree
Bobby.
with that. If this is all they're gonna do and they pick either convert a G League guy to a standard contract or just pick up someone who's never gonna play, I do think that's disappointing. We talked about it in the last week or two here, John. I didn't want to see them dump Springer for nothing. And not only that, they gave up a second round pick with him, which are a little more valuable now than they used to be. So as we stand right now, I don't like what they've done. And I did think they needed a wing at this deadline, given the Hauser situation. And, they haven't seen a lot of depth emerge this season through the first half. So I don't know what's available. I don't know what the asking prices are right now for some of the guys who've kicked around, but I did feel like they could have used something here. And even with that Springer contract, could you have used that to
Well,
bring back? I
yeah.
hate, John, we talked about it ever since this show began. I hate the stupid luxury tax moves. They're useless.
I didn't have Bobby getting mad this early in this show. I wasn't ready
Never
for it.
like them.
No,
It's to
look, Bobby,
save ownership
like
a
I said,
buck.
so I got this. I got this out of my system when the Celtics went out and spent money I never thought they'd spend, because I didn't think they would. And you had that one year where you knew that year where everyone was getting like that extra $13 million and they were trying so hard to stay under because they were getting that free money kickback. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, is this what they are? Is this what the Celtics ownership group is? The ones who are looking to like pinch pennies and stay below everything and like just try to get by on the margins. And like I said, is nobody gets into sports or as a fan to watch owners save money. Like that's not what we're there for. We're not collecting Wick Grousbeck cards and like seeing how much savings he has, like I'm not like lined up outside his bank. Like you're there for the players. So yeah, you got to balance the economic reality of a player like Springer costing 16 million friggin' dollars because of the tax. And that's real money, and having to cut it for very little loss. Again, what would Springer do? I could argue maybe more than they were allowing him to do. I even think, and you threw that Bill Simmons tweet out at me the other day where they could use him more. They could have used him more strategically at times to prevent runs and teams from getting back into things by getting him out there and having him hound like a Donovan Mitchell or someone like that, and make life difficult. I don't think they actually used him very well. And I think that was a misfire on Joe. And it's a bit of misfire on management, because if it's not going to be to put that money towards something else that's going to be better or you're going to use more, then yeah, from a team perspective and a fan perspective, you've gone backwards. So it is disappointing. That being said, you've got a team like the Clippers owned by Steve Ballmer, who's worth like $38 billion, wanting to save money and getting rid of like Paul George to keep themselves under certain taxes. So like nobody is immune to this. We can't pretend like that the Celtics are operating on some different level than everybody else. The money matters, and they have to manage it now and in the future in whichever way they can. All that being said, if they were to go out, the thing everybody wanted them to do at the beginning of the year, everybody but Noah, like trade Springer and sign Lonnie Walker. If that happened tomorrow, would you feel better?
Yeah, I would.
Well, that's my thing. I think the Springer thing was more about opening up that spot too. You could get O'Shea Brissett, you could get any number of guys in that spot, and so there's a huge market out there. So if they think that there's a veteran minimum guy that can be more impactful than Jaden Springer, it's not just a money move.
Yeah, I'm talking
it's
about where
also,
we stand right now.
Yeah, well, they're going to sign somebody.
At this moment, Bobby's mad as hell. Right, but it's
what
like,
if it's
they
Drew
have to sign
Peterson,
somebody.
Noah?
They have to sign somebody, but what if it's
Is that
Peterson
your biggest nightmare?
I mean, it wouldn't change anything.
What if it's someone that doesn't change a thing? Yeah.
Yeah. I actually wouldn't be surprised if it's Jrue Peterson, because this is the second consecutive 2-way with the Celtics. He's around all the time. He's been with the team. So I wouldn't be surprised if they converted him. But I think, probably you're better off. Yeah, you're probably better off, scouring the G League and figuring out if there's a player that can be more impactful right now, that's more NBA ready, defensively, whatever. So I don't know. I mean, there's certainly guys out there. There's plenty of guys that were on the Celtics last year and the NBA last year that are just in the G League now. We're just kind of waiting, and this is their opportunity to get a chance. And like we said with Yabu 6 months ago would have felt like this is some random guy that is not an NBA, and now he's like everybody wants him, right? So they might have some guys in mind that they're considering that are just not on our radar. But I don't like the Springer move. I'm not going to pretend to like it. I still think that he has a high ceiling. I still think that he can be a hugely impactful NBA player, and I think it's a perfect fit for him.
Play a little bit in Houston.
Yeah, and I love his fit there, so I'm happy for him. Despite the fact that
there could be that they could put some chaos out there on the defensive side of the ball if they wanted to, with some of the players that they have there in Houston. So he could do something there for sure.
And I'll back it up too, like I did earlier, John, real quick, just to wrap this. You had Banton, who I liked. You gave him up to bring in Springer, and now you're sending out a pick with Springer. So it's a small misstep. It's not going to cost him a championship here, but it is a couple moves where you're like, oh, those.
For what it's worth, Banton turned back into a pumpkin just as soon as Portland started to play better basketball, at points of this year. And he's kind of, settled back into being Delano Banton. I don't think he was going to matter much, and I don't think he's seeing much playing time here either. The bottom line is it's too good a team to be able to find anybody who's going to make an impact at all. So were you better off hanging on to Springer just simply because of his ability to work as a defensive specialist and trying to find a way to tap into that when you needed it? Same way sometimes when you go to Cada, when you want some extra work on the offensive glass or whatever. Yeah, maybe. It didn't happen.
You also only have 3 guards now.
Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder to the Pistons. Breaking news.
Is that what happened? Wow.
Yeah.
That's like his 4th team in like last 24
I
hours.
bad.
I do too. I'll always be on the side of Dennis Schroeder, only because I thought
we might need an apology
proportionate amount of
the
hate.
Warriors stuff, John.
Whatever. It's not so much that I never understood that move at all. Why the Warriors
really?
traded
I thought you liked it.
No, I like Schroeder. I never got it. I never got the Golden State thing really.
His fit there was horrendous.
Before we get to it, and before things expire, it's 14 minutes to go. There's definitely a few things we want to talk about that happened today, and I think the number one deal of the day, as far as the Celtics are concerned, has to be Cleveland acquired DeAndre Hunter for Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, and picks. This is interesting because, I mean, a day, 2 days after the Celtics went out there and did what they did and do what they do, Cleveland goes out and acquires a wing because they needed some help there for one reason, and that's to be able to compete with and hopefully beat the Celtics. And it is interesting, like how the entire league has been trying to do this, right? Everyone's been chasing, like, how are we going to deal with Jalen and Jason in the entire East, at least. So many moves in the offseason were done to counter that as well. And now you've got kind of a gift here. I mean, if you look at Hunter as an upgrade over what they were using as their depth wings with LeVert and Yang, I mean, he probably does he start? Does he slot in there as a starter for them for sure, right? So. He wasn't. He had been. Had he fallen to the bench for Atlanta?
Yeah. And so that's the balance with him, an extremely injury-prone player who the Hawks gave a step back to this year, put in a bench role, reduced his minutes a little bit, and got enormous per 30. John, I love the per 36. He is one of the greatest per 36 players I've ever seen. I think like 25 points per 36 for the Hawks this year. So he's been making the most of those minutes. Obviously, he's going to have to take a step up here, but they have other guys, Okoro, Wade. They didn't have to give up any of those guys here. They just gave up Niang and LeVert, who, that's probably a guy who's, becoming a little more injury prone and unreliable for them anyway. So I love this move. I tweeted it, John, of course, to many people's dismay, that I think the Cavs are a legitimate finals team now, because this is the only position they needed to shore up. Like, they did not have the wings to guard the Celtics. They didn't have the consistency at that position. Strus, signing him hasn't gone the way you thought it would. And Wade, as we've mentioned, John, seems to be out every single time they play the Celtics, and he's the only guy that can actually stand with Brown and Tatum a little bit. So to bring in Hunter here, again, a little more of a mid-range assassin than a three-point one, despite some good numbers this year, and physically hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout his career. if he can be out there and effective and fresh for a series, you love having that option against Boston. Though Tatum's numbers against him have been great. I think Brown's numbers against him have been great. So he's not exactly a Brown and Tatum stopper per se. It's just way better than what they had.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a good trade for them. I'm not a big Niang fan. I think that he's one of those players. Whenever he checks in, I'm like, I feel like it's good for the Celtics. Not to be mean, but I think sometimes you lose a rotation player that maybe was almost a little bit of a liability for you. It's a little bit of addition by subtraction there. But I think that DeAndre Hunter, he's just a very solid player, solid scorer, and for a contender team to make a move like that at the deadline, I feel like that's more unusual than these teams that are just kind of recklessly doing things. But I kind of felt it coming because pregame before the other night when we were in Cleveland, some of the reporters were asking Kenny Atkinson about, like, do you tell the GM like you want to hold off on trades or you really like this group? And he was like, no, we're going to see how we can get better, like, at the deadline. So he totally made it sound like they were totally in trade talks and trying to see where they can make some upgrades. And obviously I think this has been in the works for the last few days.
And this is, again, I know, like, if you're a Celtics fan right now, you're going to have a bit of FOMO when you see teams improving and you're like, we could have used a guy like that. And it's just, you can't do it. There's nothing you can do. And that's the worst part about the deadline is Celtics aren't going to improve, but other teams are. So you're going to lose ground simply because you can't make up any ground. There's really nothing you can do. The Celtics have built a complete roster. And anything that you want here is, I'm not going to say greedy, but these are champagne problems the Celtics have right now. If you're talking about, wing depth would be great. Sure, an extra big man or something. It's really hard to have a team as complete as the Celtics and be able to add. And we all know what their cap situation is and how difficult it is for them to make moves. But that's it. There's nothing spicy coming here. Does this move? I mean, where did you have Cleveland? Where did you have Cleveland relative to the Celtics prior to this trade, and how much does it move them? I still think they were I still think they were a little bit behind Boston, despite the record. Does this come close to evening it up?
They were 2. They're probably still 2, and it's going to have to take a break or 2 or maybe even 3 for the Cavs to actually beat the Celtics. But this makes it much more likely to me, Noah, that they're going to get through the Knicks. They're going to get through some of those other teams they might have to face along the way at Milwaukee and meet the Celtics in the East Finals. And as we talked about the other day, does home court come into play? Does a health swing or two actually allow for the Cavs or Celtics to swing that series in one way or the other? I would still pick the Celtics in a series right now, but it would be grueling, especially if you are going on the road for a Game 7 in a series like that. To me, it just really solidifies the Cavs and the Celtics in a class of their own in the East.
Yeah, I think it bumps them up a bit, but it doesn't change my perspective on them in a series. And I just wanted to add, I think there is FOMO, obviously, for people who want to. The trade deadline is a lot of fun also, so people just want to see their teams make a move and everything and maybe meet a new player. But you can also get worse at the deadline. And I would say that right now, I think Milwaukee, for example, got worse at the deadline. I don't like Kuzma there. I think Chris Middleton is a player that I would personally rather have on my team come playoff time, just given his body of work. And even last playoff run, he was great. And so I think you can also make him.
Yeah, it's less his body of work and more his body that I think is the issue.
Sure, yeah, but he's been available. Kuzma's efficiency's been terrible. I mean, we'll see how that trade pans out. But my point is
Kuzma's awful. I don't get this at all. No, I'm with you.
Right. So I think at the end
we
of the day,
have the first potential buyout option, by the way, Reggie Jackson, and the free agency waived by the Wizards. So
he's another guy. I feel like he's
guards
gotten waived like 30 times in the last few years. Some of the same people are just used as trade chips all the time. It's really unfortunate for them. But I think you're better off not making a move than making a move for the sake of making one. And there's also the reality that it's really hard to integrate a player midseason. And I think we saw that last year with Tillman and Springer.
Tillman.
Like they didn't really, like they came in midseason. You can't just jump in. Like we talked about Luke Cornett and just like his continuity and things. So there's an element of like, even if you get a player that's like a little bit better, if you're trying to win a championship in 3 months, like you're probably better off just holding on to what you have and the system that you have.
that's what we talked about is, we've mentioned this on the show before, but it is interesting. And I know Brad Stevens has said it also. When you're a team like the Celtics and you've got basically, your first 8 spots really spoken, how good a player do you have to trade for to come in and make an impact? They have to be at least better than Peyton Pritchard. You know what I mean? Like probably, than how, or
Impossible.
Sam. Impossible. How can you can't be better than that? But think about it. You have to trade for a player better than Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard. Not saying that's impossible, but those guys aren't just available for nothing. So it's really rare to have a team that has, basically 1 through 9, if you include Cornette spoken for, and come in and make an impact. You really are just playing around the edges there with Tillman or Springer. Like, maybe they can contribute a little, or maybe they're an injury replacement during the regular season. But you get into the playoffs, there's no minutes to be had for anybody that the Celtics could acquire here, or whoever they're adding as a 14th man or picking up in a buyout market. It's just not going to happen. So it's really interesting to see a team like Cleveland, who's number 1 in the East, trade for a starter. That's different. That's definitely, and we don't know how it's going to fit. And you're right. You have to integrate him into all of that. But that is a pretty significant move. They're the number 1 team in the East, and they just improved their starting lineup, which is hard to do when you're one of the better teams.
Milwaukee or Cleveland?
Cleveland. Milwaukee's worse.
Yeah,
I agree with
sure.
Noah.
And Justin, we had Justin Rowan on last night, and he threw that name out there. He thought that was a possibility for them. And, immediately I was like, oh shit, like that's not just some wing stopgap guy, a little help at that position, which is what the Cavs have been doing for a while now. I like Ty Jerome, not a wing stopper. Not, they have a lot of small wings too. In fact, I saw someone joke on Twitter earlier that like the only 3 wings that the Cavs had over the last however many years.
Marcus Smart on the Wizards.
What?
No
Oh,
way.
no.
No.
That's just so sad. Smart and oh. What happened?
I don't know. I don't even remember what we were talking about. I saw Marcus Smart show up on my feed.
Well, him and Brogdon are back together.
Oh my God.
Lose.
How
really?
did Brogdon
Damn, that
and
trade
Smart
did not
end
work
up
out
in
for them.
Washington? No, Tyus Jones was good for them, and it was a great Morant backup too. I thought that's what they thought Smart was going to be. Wow, having to move
They
off.
couldn't get any value for him.
No, they had to send a first with him to move off him.
I just saw that. That's crazy.
Wow. Well, maybe I'll allow him to go somewhere else, get healthy.
The worst thing that can happen in your playing career is when you stop being a player and you start being a player's contract. Like you're no longer Marcus Smart, you are Marcus Smart's contract. They're just moving Marcus Smart's contract instead of Marcus Smart. The player no longer has value. It's the money you no longer want to pay. And that's sad that
and they valued the player, obviously, right? When they went and got him.
Look, I do not want to shovel dirt on Marcus Smart's grave here because I feel awful that this happened. I loved how much he loved being a Celtic. I was never a huge Marcus Smart fan in the way that everybody else was.
Kevin Porter of the Bucks, by the way.
I thought the myth of Marcus Smart was 5 times greater than the player himself. But at this point, $20 million for this plus the injuries is really, really tough. So I do feel bad that it's gone this way. I hope it can bounce back. I hope he finds a home after this.
By the way, sounds like the Celtics are done. I don't think there's going to be anything sneaking in here last minute.
Breaking news. There will be no breaking news. 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes to go.
I cannot believe Marcus Smart just got traded for nothing. That nobody wanted him? It's been really a tough ride.
I only thought it would have been the only way I thought he got traded was for another contract somebody else didn't want.
Right. So there was a report out there a handful of minutes ago that the Grizzlies checked in on Durant. And obviously they were looking around on Butler too before Butler shut that down. So I think Smart would have went to Miami in a Butler type deal or would have went to Phoenix in a Durant type deal. And once you're not doing anything, if you're Memphis, you're probably just trying to get under the tax, which I'd imagine this was about. And man, Yeah, I mean, he's making $20 million. They couldn't have just traded him to the Wizards as a dump here. There's got to be some other stuff moving around in that trade. So we'll see what that is. But obviously, the main motivator there is just to get off Smart's money. And it's not a ton of money. It's like $20 million this year, $20 million next year, and then he's done. So this isn't like a Holiday contract like we're talking about, John, that's going to get up close to $40 million over the next 4 years.
It's not what I've always said with Smart.
He's been so injured and unavailable and unproductive that they moved on.
I've said it's the same story it's always been, and my opinion on it has never changed. He's just not worth that money to anybody, because I view him as a luxury. Everyone wants a Marcus Smart on their team, but in this finite universe of how much money you have to spend, $20 million on a player like Marcus Smart is a tremendous luxury. You're asking him to be a tone setter, a culture setter, and play at an extremely high level all the time, stay healthy, and be a defensive stopper for you, just to even come close to justifying the $20 million, because he's not going to give you anything on the offensive side of the basketball. And that's really what you're paying money for these days for players. You're much better off grabbing some gritty hustle guy to come in here for much less money to go out. You're much better to have a Springer type than Marcus Smart, for pennies on the dollar, and use him as a defensive, whatever. So like I said, I never really fully got it to that thing. And we're there, by the way, 3:00, ding, 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 ding. Trade deadline has passed. Doesn't mean things can't trickle in. But the NBA trade deadline has officially passed. It is 3:00. There could still be some deals popping in here. Just to let you know what we're going to do. We're going to hang here. We're going to keep talking about some of the stuff that's happened. We'll stay on for a little bit longer just in case any news comes across after the deadline. Noah has to boogie. Is that correct?
Yep, I will see everybody later tonight.
But she'll be back later on in the Garden Report. The Celtics do play the Dallas Mavericks tonight without what a bummer. Anthony Davis. Yeah, without Anthony Davis.
Did he just bang out? He's playing Saturday. Couldn't have played tonight.
I mean, it's easier to just stay there and play home.
Yeah. Well, he's here. He shot around this morning.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, I don't know why he couldn't have played a little bit tonight, but whatever. Still see Kyrie. Still talk to Jason Kidd about what the hell happened this week. It'll be a decent night. And the snow stopped, thank God. No school today, John?
Yeah, no school. It's been a great day for me and the kiddos here. Really fun.
All right, so nothing for the Celtics. By the way, 2 weeks. They have 2 weeks to fill that spot. So I don't think they're going to be sprinting to go grab someone right now. But obviously what we're talking about in the buyout market, Torrey Craig's a name people like. Reggie Jackson waived. He's eligible. Dennis Schroeder was not that I don't think they would have been rushing to grab him, John. Like Malcolm Brogdon, if he's bought out, you can't. The number's $12.8 million. So if someone makes less than $12.8 million, Celtics can sign them. If someone makes more than $12.8 million, they cannot.
I'm seeing in the chat, Wiseman is a Raptor.
Yeah, torn Achilles, so just a money dump.
Too bad, too, because they liked what they were seeing of him earlier in the year, and that happened right away. That was a bummer.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, we are going to keep.
And then they lost their center. Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to keep going, as we said, for a little bit longer here. Real quick, we want to let you know about our sponsor over at Prize Picks. Number one place to get going here, Daily Fantasy. If you want to check it out, you see that promo on the screen. Download the app, CLNS. New users, play 5, get 50 instantly. Again, best place to win real money. And as we get closer and closer to the big game, and of course, you know what I mean with the big game. And as always, there are promotions. You see here, Flex Friday, Taco Tuesday. Those are normal. But for the big game, you're getting a free square with Patrick Mahomes. 0.5 pass yards. That's all you have to do. More than 0.5 pass yards. Really, again, so you know how to play. It's more or less on any stat for 2 or more players. Win up to 1,000 times your cash. But here, it's just a freebie. 0.5 pass yards. Mahomes goes more than 0.5. that's a converted square, and you're on your way. So again, you want to get in on the action, download the app, code CLNS, new users, play 5, get 50 instantly into your account. Prize Picks, run your game. Any Super Bowl predictions, Bobby? I kind of sort of like the Eagles.
I do too, but I like the Bills too. So I can't predict that the Chiefs are going to lose.
I can't either, but I thought for sure the Chiefs were going to beat the Bills.
I thought the Niners were winning last year. I can't keep doing this. I like the Eagles. I like what they're doing, but the Chiefs have a big quarterback advantage in this game. They just keep making magical things happen. Their defensive line's great. So I'm going to go Chiefs.
Jamel, thank you very much for saying this. Hey, we've said this all the time. We don't just do post-game reports. We're here for stuff like this and any sort of breaking news. Garden Report promises. It's a Garden Report guarantee. We will go live anytime there's something to talk about. And of course, with the trade deadline, even though the Celtics didn't do anything, there's plenty to talk about here. And again, as we see, moves are still kind of trickling through here. So Bobby, you're much better at this.
Who's released. Yeah.
You're much better at this than I am. So go through it. Like, any names right now that pique your interest who either have been or you think will be bought out or released that you think the Celtics could pick the bones. And again, just so people understand, the Celtics cannot sign anybody right now who made more than the mid-level, correct?
Yeah.
Like on a buyout. Yeah. So like if anybody made more than the mid-level exception on their previous contract, even if they get bought out, the Celtics cannot sign these people. So you're really talking about the absolute dregs here in terms of who might be available and at what level. So who out there is interesting to you at all?
So your guy, Josh Richardson, went to
my guy,
Detroit. I don't know where the hell he ended up in that Butler trade. He went.
Let's assume everybody's on the Wizards right now because that's a safe assumption. The Wizards are going to release like 11 guys. The Wizards probably have 24 active guys on their roster. They're going to buy them all out tomorrow.
He's been dealing. So he was here. I didn't love his fit here, John. He was okay. It looked like he was off to a decent start with the Heat, and then he got hurt a ton. He hasn't played since November 18th. It wasn't going great before that, so I don't think you're rushing to grab him if he's Jake's free. I think he ended up on like the Pistons or something in that trade, so he's probably not going to stay wherever he is. Torrey Craig available. It's a good name. Like people remember Torrey Craig, Suns, Bucks, all these different stops, and he was good. He's like 6'7".
I'd rather trade for Torrey Krug. Yeah.
Yeah. I like him as a player, and he's a guy who's used to sitting and being available if necessary. That isn't going to expect a role, but he's only played 9 games this year, and the Bulls just got rid of him. So again, a lot of these names are just, we do this every year, John. It's like, oh, this guy broke free. This guy became available in the buyout, and then all of a sudden they don't do anything. So it is really hard. Javonte Green's another guy I really would have liked for them to have taken a look at, but maybe the Pelicans want to keep him. He's been pretty good for them this year. So we'll see if he ends up breaking loose, but I doubt it at this point. We're talking about like Torrey Craig, Reggie Jackson, Josh Richardson. That's the kind of stuff you're going to be looking at here. So would you rather go look at a G League guy that you like the way he's playing this year? Would you rather just sign Drew Peterson, who would cost $1 million? Again, I think they're going to take the cheapest possible route here. Even Lonnie, John, and we can kick that around for a second if you want.
Honestly, I'm joking about Lonnie. Lonnie's trash too. I don't think that's.
And there's an international buyout, right? So that's just money you save going right down the drain again for a guy who's probably not going to play. So I wouldn't expect Lonnie either. Again, we'll keep an eye on what names break free right now, but nothing that's going to change much about this team. If it's Torrey Craig, I'll be satisfied. I won't be doing backflips. But yeah, I wouldn't be ready to be excited about anything that they do with that spot.
No, I wouldn't either at this point. I don't think I mean, again, it's name me the great buyout players in the history. Like even when you have no restrictions on who you're getting, most of these times it doesn't make an impact. Given that the Celtics really can't sign anybody of value, again, you're looking at I mean, Brissett,
Remember,
Lonnie, Josh Richardson.
you know who was a big one? Who was the guy who killed the Celtics for years there with the Heat? The guard. Dragic? Was that his
Yeah.
name? Goran Dragic. Remember he went to the Heat and everyone was like, "Oh shit, it was that Harden, Durant Heat team," and then he didn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the Nets team rather. That
Yeah.
Durant
The
and
really
Kyrie and all them.
really the question comes down to whether anybody has surpassed the Celtics here. I think Cleveland, again, we're not going to say surpassed. I think Cleveland did about as well as they could possibly do here. So look, if you're a Celtics fan right now, I think it's fair to say this was not a great deadline for you, not because you expected the Celtics to do anything, but because your chief competitor probably made the best move that they could make.
Yeah, for sure. And they filled
This
the
isn't
position
panic. This isn't like, oh my God, Cleveland's so much better. But like, what did you want? You knew the Celtics couldn't really improve, so you were hoping their competitors didn't improve much better. As Noah said, I think Milwaukee made themselves worse. The Knicks are the Knicks still. That's fine. Health is really their key.
You weren't on
and
the
it's-
show
it's-
yesterday, John, or 2 days ago.
I
What
was
was
not.
your big takeaway from that game? Because we're sitting there, we're trying to figure it out. It was an ugly game, but what I came away with was, as the Cavs stood that day, yeah, they can hang with the Celtics. They can make it tough. They can play a good game against them, but it's not looking like they can beat the Celtics in a series.
I
in any
don't
circumstance.
believe Cleveland can. I've never believed Cleveland can beat the Celtics in 7 games at all. I think the Celtics can beat themselves in 7 games. But like I said, is the Celtics' best game is still a little bit above Cleveland and the rest of the East. Last year, I thought it was this far above. This year, I think Cleveland is legit, and Cleveland can stay with you, and Cleveland has enough firepower and guys who can get hot that they can absolutely not steal games. They can just flat out take them from you, and they've got the bigs down low, and Garland's playing great. Mitchell's Mitchell. He can single-handedly beat you in any close game. That's always going to be a threat. So I think they're scary, but I just don't see it over 7 games. I never have. So this makes them a little better. I don't think it. I mean, do I think Hunter is? I don't think much of LeVert either, but I don't think Hunter is like a 10 and LeVert was a 5. I think
he's
like
a real wing. They were playing a lot of guys at the wing spot who weren't really wings.
Yeah.
So this is a sturdy defense. Even back to my days at Syracuse, John, I love this guy. Like came into the dome, shut down Syracuse left and right every time he was there. I think he was a one and done. So he's a great defender. He's a good shooter from mid-range. Again, it's more mid-range than three-pointer, though he is 39 this year. So I love his game. Health's a big question with him, and it's a big question on both sides here. And that's where I think this brings them, John. If the Celtics are fully healthy and rolling, they win this series in 5 or 6. If the Celtics are missing a guy or two, or someone's not right, or we're seeing these diminished versions of some guys, and the Cavs are fully healthy, all of a sudden, especially with home court, things could swing their way a little bit. So it's close. You're right. The gap's smaller here between not only the Celtics and the Cavs, but a couple other teams here. So we'll see what this looks like. But you didn't think the Cavs could go out and get a guy of that caliber who's going to ascend above all their other wings. So it's a pleasant surprise for Cleveland.
What does Atlanta gain out of this?
I don't know. I don't like the LeVert contract. I don't like where he's at as a player right now, so I don't think that's it. I thought they might be able to get back like a Jerome or something like that, but they bring back Niang, who's not going to help them too much. I guess the picks. I don't know, but Jalen Johnson's down for the year, so the Hawks were kind of screwed anyway. So maybe they're just kind of taking a step back here. They moved Bogdanovich today too. So if you were thinking the Hawks might be able to hang with the Celtics in a tough second round series, that's probably out the window now that they've moved a couple of their key guys. So yeah, not a great week or two here for Atlanta. That Johnson injury just killed them. That was brutal.
That was brutal. That was tough. That's tough for him. So let me see. How many is this now? Schroeder, is this 4 teams for Schroeder this year?
Nets, Warriors, Jazz, Pistons. And how about the Jazz?
So let's talk.
Why do the Jazz just keep passing on players instead?
The Jazz also are. I think the Jazz are the 3rd team in every single deal. Let's talk about a couple of the other ones before. No joke, it's crazy. Before we wrap, like I said, we're gonna hang a few more minutes just to see if anything else trickles through. Because if there is a deal, we want to be around for it. I also want to talk about some of the ones from the last couple of days, and I know you guys probably got a chance to talk about some of them on the show the other night. So I'm interested there. But I did want to get your take and give mine on Butler and some of the other things that went down. So we'll talk about those. But first, we're going to hear from another one of our sponsors over at Game Time.
This episode is also powered by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to the games, events, and concerts you want to see. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Game Time is filled with terrific features like all-in pricing, so you know exactly how much you're paying. No surprise fees at checkout. You also get panoramic views from your seats in the app, so you know exactly what you'll be looking at before you buy. Plus a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Once again, download that Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. What time is it? It's game time.
And speaking of Game Time, if you wanted to head down to the Garden, which Bobby Manning will be doing himself, and as soon as we get off the air here, Celtics back home taking on the Mavericks. It's been a lot of road games. They're back on the road again after that, heading to New York, where Bobby will be headed also New York and Miami after that. Both Bobby and Noah will be at those games. So again, stay with CLNS for coverage here and away of the defending world champion Boston Celtics. But some seats available here if you want to get in on it. Some decent stuff here if you want to get. Look at that. That's not too bad. Some decent seats here if you want to get in and check out the Mavs. Still, one of the cool things with Game Time, the prices go down the closer you get to tip-off or the start of whatever it is you want to check out. So pop in if you want to see it. There it is. Plenty of good seats available. Download the app. Use code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. And we really do appreciate it if you do support our sponsors. It makes it so much easier for us to be able to bring you this free content as we like to do. And we'll never change. It's what we're always going to do. But again, if you can support our sponsors, we would be grateful. Check out Game Time. It really is a great app if you want to get in and check out a concert or a sporting event. It's my preferred app. I think the layout is great. The panoramic views from your seat are awesome. So check it out. Game Time, $20 off. Use that code CLNS. Bobby, let's get to some of the other stuff here. Your initial reaction was that on the Butler trade that Miami didn't get much. How much more did you think they were going to get?
Well, there were some rumblings the other night that maybe you could have gotten Durant, given Phoenix's obsession and Butler's obsession with actually ending up in Phoenix. That was a real thought the other night. And Windhorst ended up, reporting on that the next day. So that was a possibility for a minute of maybe the Heat coming out of this clean. And then you end up with Wiggins, who's fine. And again, I know people are tossing around their stats. I'm not going to do that with the way that Butler started this year. That's a concern for Golden State, though. Butler is sat out for most of this year. He hasn't played often over the last 2 years here. And he's heading to a team that he didn't necessarily want to go to. Didn't we see some reporting over the last week here, John, that he didn't want to go to the Warriors necessarily, at least over Phoenix?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he signs an extension here, which is
there's also a
concern.
The Durant one, yeah, he did not. And Durant did not want to go here. And also a report, Durant is shocked that Phoenix is taking calls on him. Of the biggest, we'll talk about winners and losers from this deadline, but
What
the
the
Suns
F
are definitely
is going
the
on
biggest
in Phoenix?
losers. I don't know, but I don't
They
think
not
that
only
this is
did
terrible.
nothing, but they bombed their room. We'll get to that in a second, though.
I think you could do a lot worse than Wiggins, by the way, here. I don't love Wiggins. Yeah.
They had a decent day, and I like them going out and getting Davion Mitchell, too, who's a good defensive
And
player.
Davion Mitchell's a nice little yeah, exactly.
Wiggins going to play. Butler wasn't playing. I get that they came out of this okay. But if you were going to say a year and a half ago, John, that, all right, you might move off Butler, take a step back, start looking toward the future here, this isn't the kind of package you'd imagine.
Bobby,
back. He just bombed his own value.
Bobby, breaking news.
We got news?
Breaking
All
news
right.
for you. Okay. Brace yourself.
Let's hear it.
The Thunder have waived Daniel Tice.
All right.
Just letting you know.
This is what we do. This is what we do every year is Tice coming back. Daniel Tice is eligible to
Daniel
sign
Tice
with the
can
Celtics.
can sign here. He absolutely can.
Yeah, hasn't played great this year, hasn't been super healthy, but I would take him back. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Damn, I thought the Thunder were actually going to use him. They traded for him, but that's not.
So there it is.
We'll always love
Daniel Tice. Huh? Yeah.
We'll always love Daniel Tice.
You did.
I'm
Anyway,
waiting to see
so let's go
details on that smart trade that's going out.
Me too. Let's go through some of the winners and losers of trade deadline. We mentioned losers right now. Obvious winner is Cleveland. They don't give up much. They improve. They improve in an area that they most needed to. So that's good for them. But and the losers right now, I think the biggest losers are the Phoenix Suns, because who knows what's going on there. But what a mess. They couldn't get anybody. They're losers going back to making the Beal deal and then not being able to get off of it. They couldn't trade Beal for anything here, which is unbelievable. And this is a guy half of the world wanted to trade for, Jaylen Brown for a couple of years ago. And he's just completely cratered.
Yeah, and the Lakers took a risk earlier, but I would put them in the winner category too. Obviously, adding Luka Doncic and then getting in Anthony Davis's place a great center in Mark Williams, who, like Robert Williams, when he's healthy, it's game breaking and exciting and exhilarating. But there aren't many moments where he's actually healthy. That's another thing, John. No Rob movement here this week, so he's gonna stay in Portland and hopefully string some games together. But yeah, I'll put the Lakers in there too as winners. Their team looks pretty formidable right now, even if they've lost some of their depth. And Luka's going to make his debut Saturday, I think. So we're not too far from seeing Luka out there in LA for the first time with hopefully Mark Williams, who's going to be a lot
the other
for
thing,
LeBron.
and that's the one we didn't talk about, is that's a big one. The Lakers, what do you think of the Lakers now after this deal now? Because you lost an interior, presence there, and defensively they were already struggling, even with Davis, who's an all defensive, caliber player. Now you trade for Mark Williams, who's an athletic big, to put in there with these guys. That's kind of an interesting. LA got really interesting where they weren't before.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like they're a real team now that you can actually talk about making a run. And again, it's contingent on health and a bunch of other stuff here, much like it was before to some degree. And they lost some depth, certainly here. But I like how they recalibrated their team around Luka and losing a massive piece in Anthony Davis here. It was difficult to do that. In fact, when the Kings went out and got Jonas Valanciunas, I was like, oh, the Lakers might not be able to get a center here. And again, this is no slam dunk given Williams' health. If you look at his games played log, John, over the last 2 years here, it's pretty ugly. But when he's out there, he's not only a dynamic piece, but a young piece who can continue to get better for them into the future here too. And that's a lot of what they did with the Luka trade, right? This isn't about the LeBron Davis last days anymore. I mean, it's about into the future.
Nobody knows anything about him because he doesn't play. 43 games his rookie year, 19 last year, 23 this year. This is a guy that, like I said, we haven't gotten a chance to see much of, but you know what he could be. I'd be thrilled if I'm the Lakers here. And again, I know he hasn't, he's been hurt, but this is a big move for them.
The funny thing was they gave up a bunch of picks to do it here, a swap and a 2031 first that probably should have gone to Dallas for Luka. So pretty crazy that they actually ended up giving up a lot more here in terms of picks and players and assets than they gave up for Luka in the first place. So they did well in the end. They did very well.
Yep, they did. Oh, Bobby, what are you doing? Did you leave on purpose?
Yeah, I'm back.
What kind of move was that? Oh, someone popped in your room?
Someone popped in. We had to move the cars around with the snow.
That's all right. Anyway, closing thoughts here before we wrap it. As we said, there's a game tonight, so we'll be back on the Garden Report after the game. But any other thoughts here?
Again,
like I said,
I wanted them to do something. I wanted them to do something and not just a salary dump. And here we are. They didn't do anything except the salary dump. So was there anything to do? Maybe not. Again, you go out and get Javonte Green. Does he even play? Does he even do anything? Maybe not. You need your picks more than ever. I get it. This isn't 2021, John, where they did a salary dump and moved below that tax line and got Fournier just for show, and it didn't actually do anything. They don't need as much this time around. They might not need anything. So I'm not going to sit here and kill them, but I'm just a little disappointed because, John, and we're there in Cleveland, and I know he's playing better, but Sam Hauser, just with a massive bag of ice on his back after the game in the locker room. And that's just something you're going to keep watching the rest of the way. Is he going to be able to play through that and continue to be productive week in and week out, given that ailment he's dealing with? Your guard depth took a hit here with Springer. So, you have a guard go down. All of a sudden, you're in a little bit of trouble at that position. So depth-wise, they've had more guys, I think, John, lose the ability to contribute to this team than actually look like they can do it. When you're talking about Tillman, Walsh, all the guys that they've tried out down the line here, who Joe seemingly doesn't have a ton of trust in. And the one guy who is actually starting to ascend a little bit and do some stuff over the last week here or two and make you feel like, oh, he could actually be a piece in this spot or that spot, you end up just moving for salary reasons. So I don't love it. It doesn't matter. It probably won't impact them at all, whether they did or didn't do something here. But I just wanted to see a little bit of a contingency plan from a depth perspective, given how important this year is. Instead, they moved one of those depth pieces for nothing, and they attached a pick to do it. Couldn't you have traded a pick to actually get someone, John?
No, but I mean, that was the story at the beginning of the year, right? I think they were hoping his value would keep them from having to attach a pick. But the reason they didn't trade him prior to the season, potentially to free up enough space to have signed Lonnie Walker, which is what was thought they were going to try to do, was that they didn't want to give up a pick. And then they held out as long as they could, got to the deadline, and his value was exactly the same, which is you got to attach a pick with him in order for him to be traded. So I mean, I've already reconciled myself to the fact that Daniel Tice is definitely going to be the 14th player.
I like your thinking,
but I'm not in favor of it. I'm just saying that that's what I think is going to happen.
So he's not a wing, but
I know
he's played the 4 for them in the past.
I'm not opposed to it. But I don't think it does anything for you.
And every fan wants to see them add another center, even though they have 5 right now. But if it's Tice, I can live with it.
I wouldn't be stunned there. Anyway, as we said, we have a game tonight, so we are going to wrap this show up here. We did want to pop in here in case the Celtics did anything at the deadline, but we were pretty certain that wasn't going to happen, and that's fine. As we said, Cleveland improves. Not much else in the East that you didn't already know about, but a lot of players. This was a really fun, crazy, active NBA trade deadline, going back several days. Obviously, the bomb kicking everything off was when Luka was traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Lakers, and everything's just been pretty cuckoo bananas since then. All's quiet for the Celtics as expected, but they're still the team to beat in the East until somebody proves otherwise. Taking on Dallas tonight. We will be back here on the Garden Report after the show. I think we've got a full house, so we're looking forward to seeing all of you and many more after the game. Thank you guys for joining us here in the middle of this snow day afternoon on a Thursday. Trade deadline has expired. Celtics did nothing other than trade Jaden Springer, which already happened. Was that yesterday or earlier today? My days are all jumbled.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, Jaden Springer. And that's it.
13 days to fill that spot.
13 days, or else they're going to be what's the penalty for not doing that? I know you can't, you have to have 14 at least.
I think you just I don't know what would I
don't know
think
what the
Adam
penalty
Silver would
is.
come put him in a chokehold, but I think you just have to do it.
You got to do it. Anyway, we'll see you guys tonight after the game. Thanks for watching.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to
Same.
feel that
Same
way.
to you.
Let's slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke